rubble anyway.
You up at the armory, Mac? We need to make a note to sort that shit out. Probably a whole bunch of ordnance lying around.
I'll come back later. Okay, road's safe now. Bring the van on up.
Will do. Also, Mac, the NATO guys, they've kicked in all the doors. You're free to search inside the buildings now.
Got it. At least I can get out of the fucking rain. I'll come find you in a bit.
Have fun, Remy.
Oj.
Mac, heads up. Bobcat's on the move. Wait.
That's fine, thanks, Andy. Hey, keep bear with me. It's gonna get a little noisy. We gotta clear out some more.
Take your time. Just let me know when you can talk.
Okay, road's safe now. Bring the van on up.
Will do. Also, Mac, the NATO guys, they've kicked in all the doors. You're free to search inside the buildings now.
Got it. At least I can get out of the fucking rain. I'll come find you in a bit.
Have fun reminiscing.
Morning. You been in?
You kidding me? I ain't going in there, man. That shit's all yours.
Where are you now?
Who, me? I'm exploring.
I can hear an echo.
Yeah, I'm in what used to be the mayor's place, actually. At least it was before the government forces took it over. The people here, they didn't have much love for their army.
Why do you think that is?
History, I guess. This place never supported the military takeover, the Kavala coup and all that. Plus, stationing troops in the town, nobody believed the government's spin about training. They were seen as an occupying force there to keep a lid on things.
Tell me more about Staff Sergeant Adams. You met him on a previous deployment. That must have been in Generous, right?
No, actually, this was after I'd left the military. Previous deployment with IDAP, Pakistan. It must have been, God, 15 years ago? I think. Feels like another lifetime. I got a leaflet here. The army must have scattered thousands of these.
Propaganda.
Something like that. This one says, there's still time to surrender. Maybe a bad choice of words considering.
Time to surrender. What's the context here?
This was last year, September. These leaflets, they were dropped maybe a day before the fighting began. You see, the guerrillas there, they'd found themselves a new leader. Charismatic, ex-military. For him, this was no time to surrender. Far from it. In fact, he used that time to rally his people, encourage them to resist, build defenses. Meanwhile, the army was setting up for a major offensive. The attack on Oreo Castro? It was no secret. Of course, after the leaflet dropped, IDAP started to pull out of the town. So the little I do know, well, that brings us back to the brother. The one who disappeared. His name was Alexis. He'd volunteered to build a barricade. Town was his home, after all.
So, these leaflets, they were a warning to the town.
Yeah, they confirmed the offensive.
The government was concerned about civilian casualties.
Don't sound too surprised.
So, NATO's message, do you think it was getting through? I mean, according to the laws of armed conflict, that's the principle of precaution, right?
Sure, maybe. Or maybe they were just sick of all the extra paperwork.
At what point did things become unsafe in the center of town?
Well, I'm not sure it was ever completely safe. Even before things escalated, we were concerned about being accidentally targeted. And to be honest, it didn't matter where we moved. That always remained a concern.
Do you think Alexis, I don't know, thought twice about taking these vehicles?
Look, sure, these were his neighbors, but this was their home, and it was under attack.
Help me out with some context here. This barricade.
I mean, it was crude, right? A gap between two outcrops of rock, natural bottleneck. The guerrillas hoped to block the road by jamming it with vehicles. As for the vehicles in the barricade, the commission actually linked the plates to a number of locals. Of course, several were still missing after the incident, so the investigation made some assumptions. IDAP's neutrality was one thing, but the situation they faced was quite another.
You mean to say even your own vehicles were commandeered?
Nothing like biting the hand that feeds you, huh? Hey, just a thought. You remember the earthquakes back then?
Yes, they were quite frequent. Were IDAP at all concerned about that?
Oh, yeah. Any kind of disaster relief on top of what we were dealing with, it would have just about finished us off completely. Sorry, I shouldn't have. Listen, I was thinking, even took a local priest's call. I remember I was talking to Father Georgiopoulos, and he was actually very good about the whole thing.
How so?
Something about rich men and camels. Alexis lived in a workshop. During the attack, he let his comrades set up a position there.
He put his home right in the line of fire. vehicles. I suppose all of them were taken without consent.
Well, yeah, given the circumstances. The owners couldn't exactly refuse.
Right, but that's the thing. Never mind theft being illegal. The laws of armed conflict prohibit such actions. After Alexis built the barricade, what then? Did he stay inside the town?
No, that's where the story gets more complicated. The barricade itself was later chained up and set on fire by someone else. I don't know quite who. Alexis, he headed west to lay mines. Anti-tank mines were already in the ground. If there's no pull fuse, and so long as it's not been stacked, they aren't too hard to remove. But Alexis, although he didn't use anti-handling devices, he did create a hybrid minefield.
AT mines. Mixed with APs.
That's it, yeah. He put anti-personnel mines around the anti-tank ones, made clearance all that much harder.
How well armed were these guerrillas?
Couldn't say for sure. Varied from place to place. There was actually an armory in a building on the west side of the town, though. It's somewhere we still need to investigate, once we find a way in.
These mines, how did they get hold of them?
They got them when the government's outposts fell into guerrilla hands. Bounding mines. The type that leaps up a meter into the air before exploding. Nasty stuff. Hell, nowadays they're even made with plastic casing to throw off older types of mine detector.
Lovely.
Oh yeah, just... They got them when the government's outposts fell into guerrilla hands. Bounding mines. The type that leaps up a meter into the air before exploding. Nasty stuff. Hell, nowadays they're even made with plastic casing to throw off older types of mine detector.
Lovely.
Oh yeah, just do yourself a favor. It was important for Alexis to place his mines near the anti-tank ones. You know, thinking about it, even if we had a record of where Alexis's mines were, it may not do much good.
No? I thought minefield maps were a key part of your work.
Most folks don't realize, but landmines, they don't stay put. Heavy rain, landslides, keeping a map current ain't so simple. And with all the earthquakes in this region, there's little chance they'd all be in the same place. I don't know, maybe just gallows humor, but we've got an expression for that. Landmines have legs.
And did he? Place them correctly, I mean.
No, not really. I mean, Alexis had basic training, but I'm more impressed he didn't blow himself up, really.
So, moving on, where did Alexis go next?
He took a quad bike up.
The castle? Why?
He was needed at the guerrillas' base camp.
Okay, his group were running things from up at the castle.
Mm-hmm. And I see what you're getting at. Yeah, Geneva Convention's cultural objects, I think.
The barricade. There wasn't any way around it then?
From the road? No, well, not unless you cut through the compound.
Maybe a technical question.
Go ahead.
In these situations, do those involved commonly record the locations of minefields?
That's a tough one. Take this situation, for example. I'm convinced Alexis would have made a record. It's his home, after all. But do we have access to that information? No. And that's the problem. Things, information, people, landmines, they get lost in the fog of war. But that's the thing about landmines. Lost or not, they stick around. They wait to be found.
Do you feel these preparations made a difference?
In the short term, I do, yeah. The barricade held. The government's tanks were knocked out on the road.
And in the long term?
I'd go on, but as you may have heard, it's getting kind of loud here.
By the sounds of it, you've got your hands full.
This'll only take a minute. Be right back.
Bet you wish we had one of those in Pakistan, huh?
I gotta admit, that's 60 cans of getting shit done.
Oh, by the way, while you were busy chatting to, well, whoever that is that isn't your wife.
I told you, Andy, she's a journalist. Get to the point.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I assembled the demining drones.
Both of them?
Well, yeah. They're by the van.
All right, got the terminal.
Cool. So just connect it to a drone and, yeah, take control.
You got it?
Looking good.
So, you're gonna want to use the auto hover mode. Switch it on whenever you need to stay in one place.
Auto hover, right.
I'll arm the explosives once you've reached the minefield. Heads up. Enabling charges. Having fun there?
Making things go boom, you know it.
Okay, now, the bombs. You've only got 4. Release one and it'll drop straight down. Simple physics. If you run out, fly over to the van. There's plenty spare.
Thanks. These demining charges pack quite a punch. What's in them?
500 grams of Crovex water gel, baby. Safety's on.
Understood. I'm out.
Don't sweat it. Steer back on over to the van. I'll rearm you. down where you started, over by those white containers.
Question. How can I see if I've gotten all the mines?
Your drone's got a dedicated sensor. Get close enough, and it'll detect any nearby explosives.
Gonna need another resupply.
No problem, Max. Same deal. How's it going?
Getting there.
Seriously? Nathaniel Francis McDade, how big is this minefield?
Only my mom is handy.
Sure thing, Franny Mac. Anyway, you know the drill. Send it back for resupply.
All right, almost done. That's it. What the fuck was that?
Relax, relax. It sounds like it came from the other side of town. You want me to take a look?
No, stay put. I'll go.
The Army's offensive against the town. It seems like, well, a disaster, to be honest.
Yeah, they never imagined the guerrillas would put up a fight, that's for sure. The mines on the road caught them off guard, immobilized their armor. They took heavy casualties from mortar and MG emplacements, too. Some even blamed the Army command, said they gifted the enemy time to organize.
The leaflets.
Right. It was a tough call. Complying with the laws of war, it's got a price. Hello. How'd you get here?
Another find.
Mm-hmm. Laser designator. Anything Special Forces would use to call in an airstrike.
Oh, interesting. Actually, the airstrike on the town, the details of that are fuzzy.
Турецкие вы.
Do you happen to remember it well? The airstrike, I mean.
Yeah. October 13th. Cluster bomb. Town was shook up pretty bad.
Нормально у тебя.
The Army just wasn't able to capture the place. And Colonel Arcanteros, he did not tolerate failure. So he asked foreign powers to intervene. Come in, break the guerrillas' resolve.
Right. And the evidence in the commission report, doesn't it point to CSAT?
Yeah. But truth can be the first casualty of war.
Sure, but didn't somebody witness them in action?
From a distance, yeah. Though he wasn't exactly what you'd call reliable. Guy was a goat herd. Barely spoke any English.
That was not in the report I read.
It never is. Still, he did say they came down by parachute, and that at least was corroborated by multiple sources.
These operatives, then? They moved in on the castle?
Yep. Must have been a fire team at least.
Ну да, как всегда, нравится.
The man who claimed to have seen all of this.
Наш не первый год игры
Is there
знаю
anything else you
серию
can tell
Арму.
me about him?
Not much. Like I say, simple goat herd. Lived alone. Small stone shed just north of the castle.
Okay, let's get back to CSAT. What were they doing there, on Altis, at this time?
They were an embedded training team, ETT. Officially, they were just there to oversee counterinsurgency operations.
And unofficially?
Anyone's guess. A lot of different rumors. Black sites, car bombs, false flags.
Пикачу отлично понравился. Даже очень сильно.
درگیری خونپاره 100 متر جلوتر درگیری مسلسل چی 75 متر در جلو درگیری من
The guerrillas
75
were
متر
taken
در جلو
out, one by one.
درگیری مرد 75 متر در جلو
Ну, Пикачу. Я говорю, что фильм нормальный, мне понравился.
And things kicked off with a short burst of Chinese radio channel.
درگیری افسر 75 متر در جلو سربازها به میل خودتون شلیک کنین درگیری سرباز 75 متر جلوتر درگیری افسر
Господи, где они? Наконец-то. Наверное, самая лучшая экранизация игры, которую я видел.
Then, silence. If we're to believe the goat herd, they then set up a position on the battlements. Moved to a vantage point on the castle's outer wall.
Okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped a single bomb. The positions in the town were then destroyed, but the church and IDAP's camps were left untouched. Does that match up with events as they were given to you?
Yeah, though to manage a guided strike like that, they must have had thermal imaging.
چیزی میبینم تیرانداز 600 متر سمت 210 چیزی میبینم مسلسل چی 600 متر جنوب غرب درگیری افسر تیرانداز از خفا نیم کیلومتر سمت 210 درخواست حمله هوایی به موقعیت فرستاده شد تمام
Do you know why the government signed off on such a heavy-handed response? A cluster bomb? That's rather indiscriminate, even if it was laser-guided.
Sure, I mean, with a designator, you just switch it on, aim it at, well, whatever. The idea is that you remain in place, keep the laser on target. But even if it's done perfectly, a lot of uncontrolled variables.
Окей, удачи.
One of our doctors was out on the front line with medical supplies.
Wait, he wasn't at the church?
No, he was out in the open. If they'd missed their targets, that would have been a catastrophe. That simply could not happen.
Okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped a single bomb. The positions in the town were then destroyed, but the church and IDAP's camps were left untouched. Does that match up with events as they were given to you?
Yeah, though to manage a guided strike like that, they must have had thermal imaging.
درخواست حمله هوایی به موقعیت فرستاده شد. تمام.
Copy that. Strike aircraft on the way. Out.
Do you know why the government signed off on such a heavy-handed response? A cluster bomb? That's rather indiscriminate. Even if it was laser guided.
Sure, I mean, with a designator, you just switch it on, aim it at, well, whatever. The idea is that you remain in place, keep the laser on target. But even if it's done perfectly, a lot of uncontrolled variables. One of our doctors was out on the front line with medical supplies.
Wait, he wasn't at the church?
No, he was out in the open. If they'd missed their targets, that would have been a catastrophe. That simply could not happen.
Okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped...
درخواست هم چیزی میبینم. تیرانداز 600 متر سمت
Sure,
210.
but what?
Wait, okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped a single bomb. The positions in the town were then destroyed, but the church and IDAP's camps were left untouched. Does that match up with events as they were given to you?
Yeah, though to manage a guided strike like that, they must have had thermal imaging.
چیزی میبینم. مسلسل چی؟ 600 متر سمت 210. درخواست حمله درگیری. تیرانداز 600 متر جنوب غرب.
Out.
Do you know why the government signed off on such a heavy-handed response? A cluster bomb? That's rather indiscriminate. Even if it was laser-guided.
Sure, I mean, with a designator, you just switch it on, aim it at, well, whatever. The idea is that you remain in place, keep the laser on target. But even if it's done perfectly, a lot of uncontrolled variables. One of our doctors was out on the front line with medical supplies.
Wait, he wasn't at the church?
No, he was out in the open.
Okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped a single bomb. The positions in the town were then destroyed, but the church and IDAP's camps were left untouched. Does that match up with events as they were given to you?
Yeah, though to manage a guided strike like that, they must have had thermal imaging.
درخواست حمله هوایی به موقعیت فرستاده شد. تمام.
Copy that. Strike aircraft on the way. Out.
Do you know why the government signed off on such a heavy-handed response? A cluster bomb? That's rather indiscriminate. Even if it was laser-guided.
Sure, I mean, with a designator, you just switch it on, aim it at, well, whatever. The idea is that you remain in place, keep the laser on target. But even if it's done perfectly, a lot of uncontrolled variables. One of our doctors was out on the front line with...
Wait.
If they'd missed their...
Okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped a single bomb. The positions in the town were then destroyed, but the church and IDAP's camps were left untouched. Does that match up with events as they were given to you?
Yeah, though to manage a guided strike like that, they must have had thermal imaging.
Ничего, по идее, я при запуске миссии пытаюсь ее пройти.
درخواست حمله هوایی به موقعیت فرستاده شد. تمام.
Copy that. Strike aircraft on the way. Out.
Sure, yeah, but what?
Wait.
درگیری مسلسلچی 600 متر سمت 210.
If they'd missed their targets, that would have been a...
Okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped a single bomb. The positions in the town were then destroyed, but the church and IDAP's camps were left untouched. Does that match up with events as they were given to you?
درخواست حمله هوایی به موقعیت فرستاده شد. تمام.
Do you know why the government signed a
Sure, yeah, but what?
Wait.
If they'd missed their targets, that would have been a catastrophe. That simply could not happen.
Нафиг, просто перезапущу уже миссию. Я не могу. Столько раз пробую, ничего не... Просто проигрываю. Нафиг.
Do you happen to remember it well? Okay.
دید واضح. تیرانداز 300 متر غرب. چیزی میبینم. مسلسلچی 300 متر سمت 285. سلاح‌ها آزاد. دشمن داریم. سرباز 300
The
متر
guerrillas were
غرب.
taken out, one by one. When things kicked off, there was a short burst of panicked radio chatter. Shots were fired. Then, if we're moved.
Okay, according to my notes, several targets were identified from afar, presumably by these special forces at the castle. Once they had a handle on what was what, they called it in. A jet approached from the east and dropped a single bomb. The positions in the
درخواست حمله هوایی به موقعیت فرستاده شد. تمام.
Copy that. Strike aircraft on the way. Out.
Do you know why the government signed off on such a heavy-handed response? A cluster bomb? That's rather indiscriminate. Even if it was laser-guided.
Sure, I mean, with a designator, you just switch it on, aim it at, well, whatever. The idea is that you remain in place, keep the laser on target. But even if it's done perfectly, a lot of uncontrolled variables. One of our doctors was out on the front line with medical supplies.
Wait.
By all accounts, the town just seemed to explode. Buildings were burning for days.
And this spotter, he just disappeared?
Yeah, last seen leaving the castle, heading west.
Let's talk about IDAP's doctor. You said he was on his way to the church. Did he make it there?
No. He lost his life. Killed trying to save others. I can certainly say the devastation was severe. Dozens killed, combatants and non-combatants alike. The guerrillas, they were in total disarray. Many fled, retreating to the mountains. And IDAP, we did what we could, but there were so many wounded. So many we'd never be able to identify.
Nathan?
No, I'm still here. I just need to grab something real quick. This'll only take a sec.
سوار شو.
شنیدم.
I understand that CSAT denied any involvement.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe with good reason.
Oh?
Look, I don't know. There were shell casings found at the castle. NATO mil-spec.
Okay, so then either they were supplying the guerrillas or...
Or they were there. Maybe trying to win back the government support. Maybe...
What?
I don't know.
Hear that? Sounds like our delivery drone.
I'm on it.
Just, check the box underneath for the toolkit.
I swear to God, Andy, if it's empty again...
That was one time. Trust me, you'll be dicking around with landmines soon enough, Mac.
Good, toolkit's here. See you later, little buddy.
What's that?
Nothing, just, talking to myself.
Okay, little buddy. Sure thing.
Hey, how are you getting on?
Not bad, not bad. Our gears finally arrived from dispatch. I can start deactivating mines and leftover ordnance now.
Oh, great. And do you do that by hand?
Sure do. Crawl up close, identify it, and then just, disarm the thing.
I'm sure it's more involved than that.
Yeah, well, I may have skipped the part where, it can explode.
I've been meaning to ask, after NATO pulled out, when CSAT stepped in, how did that affect your work?
Day to day? I mean, CoinOps stepped up, but honestly, things are already sliding that way, even with NATO at the helm. For the most part, CSAT were mindful of our activities. Brutal, no doubt, but at least clinical. Whole thing felt like one big PR exercise for them. Our camp in the town, I still remember it clear as day.
Were there many of you?
From IDAP? No, not really. 4, maybe. Sometimes a couple more, depending on what we had going on. It was mainly logistics, but we did have a doctor and an ambulance.
So, Nathan, may I ask, when you first came to Oreo Castro, what were you doing there?
IDAP asked me to give some talks on landmines.
Talks? Who with?
Anyone who'd listen, really. It was all about raising awareness. You were one sneaky little bastard. Now what were you hiding upstairs? Alexis' house, his workshop, it was like something from another time.
I'm not quite sure I follow.
Pounding of a hammer, back and forth of a wood saw, I don't know. Things felt simpler back then, is all. Far cry from what was to come. There's an old photograph here. Picture of Alexis and his brother Marcos.
The civilian killed at the church. The landmine, right?
Yeah. Although honestly, it was a small miracle he'd made it that far.
Tell me more about Marcos.
Poor guy. He always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He'd made it through the airstrike, but only to get caught up in the assault that followed right after.
There were still guerrillas in the town, even after the strike.
But Oreo Castro, it wasn't just a town. It had become a symbol of the resistance. It was important for both sides, and government forces were making their final push. Alexis had made it out, but his brother? Like I say, Marcos was always shit out of luck. The guy'd been waiting at his brother's place. Marcos had been wounded, caught in the leg by shrapnel.
I see. Do you think he went there to talk his brother into leaving? Or join him?
Marcos was there to talk his brother down, I think. He was only interested in survival and not getting behind at the church.
He remained a non-combatant then?
Protected by the Geneva Convention, Article 51. But you gotta remember, right after the strike, it was total chaos. Getting caught in the crossfire was dangerous. He soon realized he had to keep his distance. An hour or two later, the government sent a truck to our camp. The soldiers searched the civilians for hidden weapons.
But they didn't find any.
No, and we'd already checked. It's vital our camps are weapon-free spaces, safe havens.
And Marcus, he must have made it through there.
Yeah, just about. We talked a few times after. I don't know, he seemed different.
I can imagine why. And what did he do after?
Hard to tell, but like I said, he kept looking for his brother.
Of course. And Marcus, his body, is still there in the churchyard?
Yeah. To think he survived all that just to return to the same spot less than a year later.
Nathan, you said that Alexis had been a recruit in the Altis Armed Forces.
Yeah, that's right.
So his decision to leave the army, to join the guerrillas, do you know how that came about?
It's funny, I asked Marcos the same thing once. He just looked at me and shrugged. Later on, I heard their father had been killed in the Civil War, but I don't know. Whatever his reasons, Marcos seemed to have made peace with the fact he wouldn't change his brother's mind. NATO's been busy, even managed to clear out a few mines.
You mentioned that IDAP worked with a local mechanic. How did that come about?
Hollywood might call it serendipity, but I don't know. He just saved our ass one time, and then another, and so the story goes. There wasn't much special about his setup, but guy knew the difference between a crankshaft and a tire iron.
He was good at what he did then.
There wasn't much he couldn't fix. Never asked for a receipt, though, if you know what I mean. The church, where the mines are, it's sealed off now.
By IDAP?
No, NATO. They lost some guys there in the firefight. One of their EODs is helping clear the place. But, he's not exactly moving quickly. Special type, too. Very distinctive.
The remnants of the firefight? The one you've been telling me about?
That's right.
And Alexis? He'd been there?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I just met a guy claiming to have known him.
So, this firefight, it was... Just let me check the calendar. 8 days ago?
Yeah. Day of the NATO invasion. After the flashpoint on Stratus, there was chaos. Nobody seemed to know what to do. Finally, NATO got their act together, launched an assault on the Altus mainland.
And CSAT?
Caught off guard by the whole thing. They were there to fight guerrillas, not start World War III. So when CSAT dropped their support, government forces panicked. They were on the back foot. Needed to regroup. Major Gavras was put in charge, but it was a tall order. Gavras tried to fortify their position in the northwest, but it was a risk, and he ended up cut off. The guerrillas, they didn't hesitate, stormed its position, sent the survivors running.
Okay, and if you don't mind me asking, how did you come to hear this?
And the Major's adjutant. Along with Gavras, the two of them were trying to make it to a helipad.
Move 200 meters. Front.
designed to make it.
NATO took it out.
How?
Tank buster. At that point, they had air supremacy. Caught it on the hop.
Did they have another plan?
Not exactly, but they decided to make a stand at the church.
Move 200 meters. Front. Helicopter, 75 meters. Back.
And the Major, what sort of a man was he? Was he respected?
Yeah, I mean, his reputation wasn't bloodied in the Civil War. Gavris was his own man, knew when to follow orders and when to adapt them.
Not the type to violate Loak, then.
Well, that's a gray area. In the course of the firefight, the Major used a mine dispenser. You can think of it like a portable minefield. This thing throws 14 mines as much as 50 feet, spread out across a wide arc of fire in front of it.
And they're designed to maim rather than kill.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong. They can still be lethal. The Major ordered Costas to place mines too. Alexis, alongside a bunch of guerrillas, they were approaching from the north. At the same time, a NATO squad was moving in on their position. They'd been outnumbered 10-1. Like it or not, these...
Contact!
To activate the mine
northeast.
dispenser, they could either set a timer or trigger it remotely.
Dimitiro, attack that truck, northeast.
They scattered the mines and sat tight, waiting for the enemy. Facing those kind of odds, it was the only thing they could do.
Привет, мама. Как у тебя дела?
Dimitiro, attack that rifleman. Contact, man. Target down. Fire at the medic.
Я тоже нормально. Вот туплю.
The graveyard, it would have made for quite a kill zone. I guess it made sense for him to target the point of entry, choke points, you know.
Contact! Havoc Lake, northeast!
They scattered the mines and sat tight, waiting for the enemy. Facing those kind of odds, it was the only thing they could do.
Hit!
There was only one way into the church, so placing mines around the entrance, that would have been a pretty decent play. They scattered the mines and sat tight.
Left flank! Dimitiero! Attack that rifleman!
Contact rifleman!
Dimitiero! Attack that rifleman!
Contact soldier! Contact machine gunner! Contact man! Reloading!
And Alexis, he took part in the fighting.
Yep, he'd been in the thick of it.
Dimitiero! Engage that machine gunner! Behind us!
Finally, a message came. Second helo was inbound.
They dispatched another.
Yeah, it was a risk, sure, but government forces were in free fall and the major was important. They just had to get to a different LZ before reinforcements turned up and cut them off.
Gotta reload!
He's down!
Peace and humanity. It's really something.
Gotta reload!
Area clear.
Area clear. Out of ammo. Dimitiro, rearm. Dimitiro, attack the sniper. Right up ahead. Close down. Clear. Spotted a mine.
Talk to me about the Major. What happened when he returned? Did he survive the war?
Yeah, he did. He's pretty much the reason NATO's invasion lasted 3 days instead of 1. You heard about the fierce fighting at Kalikori, right?
Yes, a colleague of mine covered that, actually.
Well, that was Gaffers. He held the line till the government capitulated. And now, actually, he's involved in the peace process.
shoot. 400 meters east. Emitido. Order vehicle.
And Costas, how did your paths cross? I'm still a little unclear.
Oh, Lieutenant Dimitriou. He came to IDAP, to our camp. The AAF provided us with information on the mines. Guy was a wreck, but his training had kicked in. He documented the minefields. Well, as best he could. But for Marcos, it was already too late. He'd already found one. Poor bastard.
And the wounded? Did Costas have anything to say about them?
Off the record.
Pens leaving paper.
His name's come up in connection to a war crime. There's allegations he carried out a summary execution.
Okay. You've mentioned Alexis was with the guerrillas. Do you know what became of him?
He was killed. Shot, I think. It's sad, honestly. Both their lives, they ended here. Just a few feet apart. Next to the church where they were probably baptized.
Honestly, Nathan, all this information, it's a godsend. You've given me loads to work with here.
It's nothing, really.
Now, there's just one last question I'd like to ask you. It's subjective, so take your time.
Sure. Fire away.
In your opinion, who's most to blame for all the suffering in Oria Castro? NATO? The guerrillas? CSAT? The Altis Armed Forces? Or, I don't know, something else? Do you think the Major's death had any impact on the war, despite the NATO invasion being a disaster?
Maybe. Certainly the government had become...
So, these leaflets, they were a warning to the town.
Yeah, they confirmed the offensive. Or maybe they were just sick of all the extra pace leaflets they were dropping.
Do you happen to remember it well? The airstrike, I mean.
Yeah. October 13th. Cluster bomb. Town was shook up pretty bad. The army just wasn't able to capture the place. And Colonel Arkin... They scattered the mines and sat tight, waiting for the enemy. Facing those kind of odds, it was the only thing they could do.
You've seen things from both sides. I mean, now as an NGO.
I'd have to say... I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think it's quite so black and white. It's more black and gray. Hell, gray and gray, you know? No one side can be held accountable for the bloodshed here. No one action got us where we are now. I don't know. What can we do? Just double down on our efforts. Heal the wounds. And the folks here in Oreo Castro, they're the ones that have suffered. This is the reality. This is war.
I still leave with the statistic, Kate. That's your hook.
Okay. I'm using the mind as a metaphor now. Buried and forgotten. Thoughts?
Sounds legit. I kept that sentence on the scars, though. Sounds too anatomical. Show, don't tell, remember?
Right. And here, US Marine Corps, not USMC?
Marine Corps. And our angle?
Last paragraph. I moved it down a bit. Figured you'd want to conclude on that.
No sword of Damocles, please. Remember, we're creating a space, defining the boundaries. Let our readers fill the gaps. Perfect. Think about the pull quotes. I'll be back in 10. Gotta tell Bartleby his story's spiked.
Thanks, Carl. Hey, Nathan. I have a link for you. It's to my article. Be gentle. It's a draft. My editor's running it by legal as we speak.
Oh, right, yeah, the mines. I still got work to do here.
Of course. Okay, well, thanks again for everything. Should I let you get on, or...?
I don't mind talking. Maybe I can tell you a bit more about the town.
Matt? Yeah, so NATO have bagged and tagged their dead.
Jesus, Andy, anyone ever mention you got a way with words?
Not really. Anywho, it's a half-assed job. Still a bunch of landmines around. Worth checking out?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I'll head up there shortly. See what I can do. Andy, you there?
What? Yeah, I'm not sleeping. What? What's up? We done here?
Yeah, I'll meet you by the van in 5.
All right, Mac. I'll get us packed up.
Only if it's not too much effort, Sleeping Beauty.
Hey, fuckhead! You wanna watch where you're walking?
If there's one thing I remember about a Lexus, it was the guy's pickup truck. Thing made a hell of a racket.
And his brother, wasn't he a mechanic? Why wouldn't he fix it?
Don't believe me, he tried. But that was a Lexus. Stubborn as a mule. Hey, it's me.
Hello. Did I hear correctly? You're on the move?
Yeah, next job. Some truck hit an AT mine yesterday. Little ways out from here, I said we'd check up on it.
Okay. I'll not keep you. Thanks again. And good luck out there, Nathan. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye, Kate.